Alrighty, we're getting ready to start. All right, Dratnos, kick us off.
Whoa, whoa. That's right. It's another episode of the PoddyC. I'm Dratnos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Dorki. Famed slayer of Fyrakk. Congratulations, Dorki.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Congratulations to Dorki, but why did you open it like it was spooky?
I panicked, man. The lights went on, the stream started. I wasn't ready. Life came at me fast.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was it scared me. I got spooked. Yeah, so Dorki now the official slayer of Fyrakk. We talked to you on stream last week, and you said like you weren't a huge fan of the fight. Did that change after you killed it, or are you still there?
Well, yeah, it was literally the day of, actually.
Oh yeah,
I
it was
literally
right
killed it
before
on the
that.
day. Yeah, we literally like talked about it, and I was like, all right, I gotta go kill Fyrakk, and then I just killed the stupid bird. I mean, I feel like the beginning, like the early progression of the fight sucked real bad, especially like the first 2 days, I would say. And then as you get closer to the kill, it gets like better and better. And then like when you're around getting to the kill points, it was pretty satisfying killing the boss for sure. And I mean, me playing Feral definitely made it more exciting. It was kind of fun playing Feral in that fight.
Yeah, first time that Feral's been even remotely decent in such a long time. That'll probably be some like comp thing we talk about at some point later on in the podcast lifetime, going up to next expansion. But Feral randomly really good for the first time in 10 years. Was it actually fun to play though? Like the whole tier?
Oh yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. I mean, I've actually talked to a lot of other Druid players, Boomkins specifically, yeah, those guys who have been playing Feral for these last few boss fights, and it is actually pretty fun to play in Raid. It's not as fun to play in M+. Like I tried making it work in M+, because why not? I've been playing it a lot. And goddamn, that class sucks real bad in M+.
Wait, how? It
Which
was so good in season
Yeah,
2,
I
season
don't
1?
know. Well, season one,
Yeah.
like I heard the same, right? Because I didn't really know how it worked in season one. Apparently, they had like different talents and stuff,
They
which
changed it
we
a
could actually
lot.
talk about
Yeah.
talent trees later. But currently they suck real bad. You have to take your AoE talents or single target talents, and when you do take your single target talents, you do absolutely zero AoE. But your AoE talents also just do jack. It is not good for M+ whatsoever. But in Raid, it's actually really fun. In Raid, the gameplay is like super dynamic. It's kind of like an enhancement shaman where you play very differently based off of your procs.
Oh,
And
that's really insane. That makes me want to try it actually.
yeah,
I think that's my favorite part of any melee spec right now actually is feeling variable like that.
yeah, and it's got a lot of thinking in between pulls, and it's not like something where you just follow the exact same rotation every single time.
See, I'm
I will say it is such a pain trying to live on that class. Like I don't know how it was for you guys. Like I've heard from a lot of people that like people who were trying to play Pharaoh Druid for this raid, it's been a major pain point. They'd be like dying a lot. And it just feels like everything just kills you. Like if you don't have something for like a blaze line, that hurts real bad. And there's been a
yeah,
lot of times where I just like
imagine being
die.
a
I'm like, oh
moonkin.
my God, I'm like, yeah.
Imagine being a moonkin. It's just like that, except you just don't have survival instincts or the ability to heal yourself in the middle of your rotation all the time. You know, it's like
You know,
it's just so much different. Yeah, I mean, druids. Smack definitely had points where like someone would die to raid damage. It wasn't like him dying from messing up. It was just like we didn't have quite enough, and it was usually the feral druid dying even before like the hunter, which again just really shines a light on like how is Moonkin in its current state because or enhanced shamans would be the other person.
Enhance, yeah. I feel like it's enhance and druids that are like
A step
just
below.
yeah, which Hunter used to be a step below that, but now I'd say it's like 2 steps ahead of it. Hunter's pretty good at living that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
obviously
Oh,
they can still
yeah.
rot out if they're out of range of a healer, which they are on Fyrakk some of the time, but other than
they
that,
just have
they've
like
got like
over a
6
million
buttons they
HP.
can press now. Yeah,
That
and
too.
a bunch of health. So that's like old conventional wisdom, I think, that's just not really true anymore about hunters.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's actually probably a good podcast topic a few weeks from now is like what is the state of tankiness in PvE in the game and like kind of I think the easiest way to do it is to group classes into brackets. It's like insanely unkillable average and then like clearly needs buffs, like this is too weak. And there are classes that people commonly think is in 1 that are wrong. Like there are people who assume that a class is here, I guess because historically it used to be, or something like that, and then it changes. And it also is very raid dependent too. But something I was interested in, Dorki, you said that Feral Druid was good, and this is probably the last little bit I'll spend on this. But I think it's fascinating that you think Feral Druid... Well, I mean, Feral Druid is good. If you look at, like, top kills of, like, you know, World First Race, Tindril, and Fyrakk, like, Feral Druids are near the top in all of them. Like, they're doing well. But you said that they do, like, no AoE, and their talent tree is hard. It's like, oh, you have to, like, completely change. It's kind of weird that they're even good at raid at all, then, because it seems like the classes that are generally good in raid are ones that get a lot of their AoE for free while still single targeting. You know, like that's like the super broken hack of every talent tree is like you want to be a Havoc Demon Hunter, right? You want to change 2 points and gain like all of your AoE. You want to be a Demo Lock, right? You want to be the opposite of a Ret Paladin, where not only do they have to choose AoE and single target talents, but they literally choose to AoE and single target with every finisher. Like, you're saying that Feral feels good outside of that, even though it has to make a ton of those bad decisions?
For this raid specifically, because of their massive burst, it just feels like their cooldowns line up extremely well on these fights, like especially Tindril. Tindril, you literally have your 2-minute burst for every single shield phase, and there's a lot of times where I straight up top on the shields, and I just do so much damage in those windows. And it was like sort of the same for Smolderon, but Pumpkin sort of has good timings on Smolderon too, if you can make it work. It's a little bit cringe though. For Fyrakk, it also felt pretty good for the boss dam, but outside of that, I mean, it doesn't bring anything too special. I mean, like ultimately, you're bringing it for the Mark of Wild, and it's good for what it is. Like, it's not a Demon Hunter or
Oh yeah, I guess that's a good
Beam
point.
Hunter.
You don't have
like
to
a
be
rogue,
one of the
but-
best. You don't have to be one of the best DPS in
Yeah.
the raid. You just have to be the best Mark of the Wild. Yeah.
Right, and I would say, like, you know, it's like good enough. It's comparable. Like, I wouldn't say it's like on the same level as like a Havoc, where you do have that burst and you are able to bring all your AoE on top of having really good single target.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a few things to talk about mainly today. So I'll give you guys a sneak peek at like what the point of today is, and it's kind of like, here's what Dragonflight introduced. Here are the main things that, you know, they put on the slide of the expansion when they announced it. And the main thing was like evergreen systems. We're going to be keeping a lot of these things going forward, even though they're still constantly working at them. So I guess like the point of today is to figure out, how did this go? You know, how did professions, Dragonriding, new classes, the rework system, like talent trees, all that stuff. That we're going to kind of go over those individually. But first, we have to talk about the holidays. So we just had Christmas. What is your all's favorite present you got, or did anything specifically, did you guys get or give anything that was significant?
All right, I'll start. So I'm not really much of a Christmas gift getter or giver, so I all I did was got myself a present. I just got myself like a new mouse pad, a nice little artisan mouse pad. Some like fancy
Artisan?
FPS stuff. Yeah, artisan mouse pad. Have you?
Is
ever
that like
heard
a
of them?
brand, or is that like a very, very...
Yeah, it's literally a brand.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a
I thought you were
Japanese
saying it
brand.
like not... I thought you were using... Okay.
Oh no,
Like
no.
handcrafted.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
handcrafted mouse pad. I was like, what is
okay,
that?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, good.
No, it's straight up the brand name. It's one of like, you know, like it's one of those like fancier ones that all the FPS players geek out on.
Gotta-
I've always wanted to try one of these. Aside from that, just got myself some
Okay.
clothes.
So you got
That's about it.
you got a gourmet mouse pad. What did
Yep.
Dratnos, what did you get?
Dude, I don't know about you guys. For me, this felt like the least gifts I've, for me
Yes.
at least, this is the least like gift I've ever exchanged on Christmas. Like I actually don't know if I gave or received a single like item this year. Really, like I
Dude,
spent time with
kinda
my
same.
family and stuff, but this, I don't know, man. It just nothing I want that I don't have, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no, I'd be same.
that is me. Like I'm at a
Yeah.
point where, you know, if I, and this is probably like most adults that have a job, if you really, really want something, you will buy it, right? So like when you're a kid, you look at, you know, adults getting socks and stuff, and you're like, oh man, that must suck to be you, huh? And then like you're an adult, and then you get like a nice pair of socks and you're like, this is an awesome gift. Like this is like exactly
Yeah,
because
true.
like most other stuff that you would really, really want, you know, you have the ability to get it yourself. And I feel exactly the same as you. Like I think the best like present I received was like my mom gave me some like really cool dog treats for the dogs. So they weren't even really for me, you know? Like so we were fine. But I made up for that by like buying myself Christmas stuff. So I've been playing a lot of hockey recently, so I got like a synthetic ice rink for my backyard. So that's pretty cool. I got some like training stuff. Okay, my dogs are popping off. I got a bunch of new like hockey equipment. I've been going back and playing a lot. So like that was my main like gift to myself, I guess. So my best present this year was to me, which is, you know, all good.
Yeah, I got a new headset that I ordered, but it's like not even shipped yet. So looking forward to. That's like there's one my guildie recommend. It's called like an Audi's something, which. Yeah, I don't know.
Nuts joke?
Wait, which one?
It's not even a D's Nuts joke.
No, yeah,
it's
the
literally
Odysseys,
the brand.
right?
Yeah.
PoddyC headphones.
Yeah.
How do you?
Odyssey, okay.
How Odyssey?
AUDEZ. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That
Is it
it
the
looks like a
LCD?
D's Nuts joke. That's where my mind goes when I see it.
Oh,
but
immediately,
it's
yeah.
apparently just a good brand. I don't know.
I've never
I don't
heard
know
of
if it's
these.
a good brand yet. I'll have to try
Yeah, they're pretty
them
good.
out. And that, my opinion can change if there's any headphone brands out there listening.
Oh, these are
My opinion
bougie.
is very much for sale on that,
These are very bougie.
as is I'm sure our official podcast opinion too.
I was just muted. These are extremely bougie headphones.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, because I've had these ones for a while and I've liked them, but they're kind of, dude, I don't know if I can show the camera, but they're like getting kind of
Wait, one sponsor
kinda-
check. All right. Ooh.
beat up.
Yeah, but they were great until this moment. They were an excellent
Until,
quality
yeah.
purchase. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. I think, man, where do we want to start with? Probably professions, right?
We can talk with the shorter
Yeah.
ones. Yeah.
I think that's kind of a easy one because it's both a big change and also one of the ones you could most ignore this expansion and just pay gold for stuff a lot. I guess this expansion did kind of start that paradigm of the sparks, right? And like a crafted piece every 2 weeks, which we didn't really have in Shadowlands, right? In Shadowlands, crafted pieces, you would get your legendaries crafted, right? But you didn't wear, a crafted ring in the same way that you do now. So
Yeah, this is like the first time there's been really power behind professions, right?
there's been some or more or less in different expansions. Like professions have mattered a lot, but
Right, but like
not in
to
this way. Like this is a
type
new,
of
and this is kind of the
power
first time
level.
it's really been designed. I guess the game's been designed for the professions in the past with in like Wrath and stuff with all the different bonuses they'd all give. But I think this is the first like time in the modern era that it's really felt like they were kind of woven into the end game, plan.
Yeah, like it's a direct upgrade most of the time.
Yeah.
Having the craft early on.
Well, so I think in general how sparks work throughout a patch, if we're just like looking at it, forget everything that happened up until this point, like just this patch, it's like, oh, well, that feeling of alternating the catalyst week with the spark week has felt really, really good. I love that. So like if that's part of professions, that's fine. I think that's less about professions because that's a means to an end. That's a way for you to get gear. I doubt they even really thought of professions when they did that. They used professions as a tool to like access that idea. So you have to talk about like how they said at the beginning of the expansion, oh, well, you're not just going to be a blacksmith. You're going to be the blacksmith on your realm that is the helm guy. Like if someone's like, I need a helm crafted, I'm going to talk to this dude. That sounded insanely ambitious. I think at the very beginning of the expansion, I think that was accomplished kind of. Like you couldn't just get any blacksmith. You kind of needed one that was going to look at a specific slot. But that hasn't really carried over as far as I can tell. It seems like most people who... Right, I think you can kind of just be a blacksmith.
There is kind of that feeling because like I think there is actually one mythical blacksmith out there who could craft 496 items. I actually have seen, but it's really hard to seek out this crafter. Like this guy, if you can find him somewhere out there in Azeroth, he will craft you a legendary item quality.
That guy's so bugged. He he had like upgrade paths on like his Hearthstone and stuff. Like his character was just like absolutely bricked. That actually happened to one of my viewers in season 1. He was, I don't know if you guys remember seeing this. It was a rep paladin with every single talent. Did you guys ever see a log of this or see this?
Seen that.
Okay, well, this dude was like parsing number 1 on like multiple heroic. He didn't do any mythic. He like did heroic fights. You know, it was like pretty insignificant as far as like the actual impact of him doing these logs. But if you looked at his logs, he had every single talent, and he couldn't stop it. Like you could not respec whatever. He was just permanently stuck. I talked to him on stream. He fucking hated this. He wanted it like removed. He had to put in multiple tickets. I haven't heard from him in a long time, so I imagine he got it fixed, but like his character is just bugged, and I think the 496 guy is just like that. Like he had a lot of stuff on his account that looked like super weird.
Dude, that would actually be so cool if you actually had like some guy who was just the legendary crafter. He just honed his abilities so hard that he's just crafting legendary quality. He's one of a kind.
Dude, yeah, that would be kind of cool. It's like there's one per realm that is like these literal best blacksmith belt maker, and like he can make a 3 eye level higher belt than anyone else. Just something like that. I guess like kind of cooking for the future. But I mean, I guess if they carry this forward, I don't know how much experience you guys have. I'll give you full disclosure. I've never crafted a single thing. I've never encountered. I probably haven't done a profession outside of leveling it up for raid benefits for, I mean, it might be like 10 years. Like 10 years. Like I completely disengage.
I did quite a bit. Like I do several of the professions like for my guild. I'm like our jewel crafter and stuff as well. So I've engaged with the system quite a bit, and I do think it did some good stuff, but also kind of missed in a big way on a lot of those actual goals they had with it, right? Like I think for a lot of people it's just so unclear how exactly it works, and you can see with this like just confusion about what they're supposed to put in the orders for things, and the fact you can't guarantee a 5-star craft on most things, and then you know people put the orders out with 5-star quality on it, and just not possible to guarantee that, right?
Oh yeah, really unintuitive.
Yeah, so the like inspiration guarantee system, the fact that there's just a public order database that's just full every day of a bunch of orders that are just not worth it to fill, and so nobody's going to fill them, and they just sit there. And oftentimes if there's too many orders, you can't even really filter without an add-on to see like which ones are actually good without having to click through multiple steps. So on the crafting end, I think it's counterintuitive in a lot of ways. On the being crafted for end, I think it's also often kind of a frustrating extra hoop to jump through. And it also doesn't really, like you said, you know, most people at this point in the expansion, there are the like crafters that just have a full tree of things, and there's not really like a helm specialist or a sword specialist or something like that. I do agree it existed briefly at the start of the expansion, but I wonder if there is some. I mean, it might just be much more annoying if they implemented something like choose one specialty type thing, though. That sounds like it would just further complicate and further make it annoying to actually find somebody who can craft your damn thing at the eye level you need, right? Because like a 3 eye level bonus sounds like a nice thing, but in practice it means like now you have to find one of those people if you're crafting a belt or something. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was the original idea behind the friction, right? Like you really want someone who specializes, but you kind of just now have everyone having everything.
And so how does that make it any different than previous crafting, right? Like, isn't that the reason to differentiate?
Yeah, exactly. Right now it's just complicated for no reason, and for most players it's just annoying. Like nobody likes to have to. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but there are a lot of people who just don't like having to find someone in trade chat and then having to like, alrighty, ask you like, how much am I trying to pay you? Like, is this just gonna be like free and tip? And like, do I give you 5K, 10K? How expensive is this gonna be?
The crafting system did come with some like, I think like legendary, should be marked down in the history of WoW scenario though, where at least in the first season there was like these crafting cartels popping up. Yeah. Which like sounds so ridiculous, but basically what they were doing is they would just get people that agreed to only make certain items for certain tips. And this is at the very beginning where not many people had these recipes or had the ability to make everything. And if you were a crafter and you were out there making these things for less than that, they would like mass report you and get your character banned or temporarily banned or whatever, which is like some straight up like Pablo Escobar cartel shit. And then I don't think that's much of a thing now. I think that's like there's just too many people who can craft everything for them to really control that. I haven't heard of that being a thing. Shout out Lariat Guy on Illidan at the beginning of the expansion. I don't know if you guys heard the stories of Lariat Guy, but he got like the Crafting Cartel was like charging ridiculous stuff for lariats, and Lariat Guy got the pattern and he made like 1 million of them for free. Or Lariat Boy, that was his name, Lariat Boy, BOI at the end. Yeah, he like single-handedly took down the cartel.
Like I was a legend. He crafted my lariat.
Yep, absolute beast.
Yeah. They would like mass report you as well if you were selling it under their pricing too,
Yeah.
and you were advertising it.
Yep, and then, that's insane. But the question is like, I guess, would you guys call this a success? They had the profession system before, and they went full evergreen on the new one. This is maybe what we're getting going forward. I'm sure they'll innovate it a bit, but like, are they on the right path? Do you think this was successful?
Personally, I would say no. It was probably successful for the smaller portion of players who made a shit ton of gold from just doing all the early crafts, but I'm not a huge fan of the profession system personally.
What do you think, Drat? I mean, Dratnos, you probably did more of it than both of us combined.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest gripe with it is actually, it's kind of weird. It's like I wanted to be a little bit more involved with it, but a couple of my characters I had to swap off of the professions I was leveling to put on alchemy so that I could put the points in where you get a speed boost and a health boost when you drink a potion, because like that makes your guy better, right? And then the other professions have stuff that makes your guy better, which really soured me on it as well. Like that that's something I've really hated, actually. I feel like that hits a pretty small set of players, because there's a pretty small subset of players who are going to swap to alchemy for a benefit that's, I mean, it's not zero, right? Like, you should do it if you're super mythic rating or something like that, but it's not like the end of the world if you don't. But it's enough that it feels, so like I'm one of the people that wanted to get more into professions and have more of my guys doing more of the professions, and then I had to, like, I don't have an enchanter anymore because I had to swap off that for alchemy on that guy.
Yeah, that stinks.
That just feels so that part really left a bad taste in my mouth at this expansion.
Well, that's something that, okay, so just a little history and WoW. So professions for a long time, I forget what expansion this stopped, but it was definitely like this in MoP, and I believe it was like this in WoD, where every profession gave you some kind of bonus in game. So like engineering was famously like synapse springs. It was like, it didn't have any passive stats, but it gave you an on use like main stat every minute, and it was like really good for lining up cooldowns and stacking and snapshotting and stuff like that. And then other ones, but you'd have like your own enchant, or you'd have your own like blacksmiths could do something, you know what I'm saying? It's like they all had their own benefit, and then little by little they kind of removed all of them. And now there's just a few niche ones that exist, but you do feel like you need to have them. Like engineering, for example, you can have like the flex weave underlay, like that on a knockback can actually like put your character in a different position, and it is good for making it extra distances. Like paladins do this frequently, where like Dryny does this all the time. If you're on your last horse charge and you have to just barely make it somewhere, at the end of your horse, you can jump flex weave underlay and then maintain that speed for a longer time as you fall. And that's like an objective performance gain. And then the same thing with alchemy. Alchemy randomly makes you take less damage from all the toxic stuff that exists, like with pots and stuff like that. I mean, the extra duration is fine, that's whatever, but like it actually has tangible benefits. But then a lot of the professions, I believe that they don't, right? Like
I think it's just those two that actually have combat power in any kind. And engineering always has some random different stuff throughout each expansion as well that you can get with it, like the knock belt on Fyrakk, or fall damage reducing boots on Razageth as well. That was
I would say knockback belt is borderline required on Fyrakk. Like, you can kill the boss without it, but like the inconsistency, having 20 people with that solves an infinite amount of wipes that you would have for things being out of position. So yeah, I mean, maybe the weird thing to point out here is just some have benefits and some don't. I'm not necessarily saying the game would be better if alchemy and engineering benefits didn't exist, because they're kind of cool, at least the engineering ones. But I don't know. I don't think it means give them all benefits, because then people are picking professions not based on the profession they want, but because it's the bonus they want. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't know. It's just it's a little weird thing for sure.
Oh yeah, that actually reminds me. Like in season 1, they kind of pushed for specific professions in dungeons. which hasn't been
Oh,
as much of a
true.
thing recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you remember, well, there was Court of Stars, right? The obvious one where you kind of wanted these specific professions like JC, blacksmith, uh, jewel
But
crafting,
they put it in
etc.
like every
Around you.
Dragonflight dungeon too,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah, yeah. The
much.
Dragonflight dungeons too. They had specific professions that were basically required, but they haven't really done anything like that since season one. I guess season two had some of it.
I hated that in those dungeons. I thought that was really cringe. The
It was very annoying.
yeah, that was another thing where I had to swap guys to certain professions to do my key push or whatever in one of those seasons. Um, so yeah, I hated that. I'm glad they didn't do it in Dawn of the Infinite at least. Like this season, we don't have any profession stuff, right?
We'll probably get it again in
Tenons.
season 4, right? Because I mean, this is totally speculation, but it seems like we would get all the Dragonflight dungeons again. But yeah, maybe we'll get that back. I actually, that may be a topic for a different day. But like, is that even cool in dungeons when you have all the like little benefits from professions or from like classes or covenants, like it was in
Covenants.
Shadowlands? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I loved Covenant abilities. You know, that was
Ugh.
I think that was more offensive to me than the profession stuff, but it was close. Both were. It was just so sad because like 90% of the time you did one of those dungeons, you had it, right? But then if you just happened to zone in and you got to a point where you wanted to like MC a gargoyle, or I forget what the biggest offenders were that expansion. It was so annoying if you didn't actually have it.
All right, so we've done professions a good bit. So I think professions can be worked on. I think there's some things we point out, but I think overall it's like it's at least just a better version of what was there before, right? I think is the consensus.
Yeah, I think if your perspective is like it's annoying and I'd rather it didn't exist at all, and professions aren't for me, and so the more they're in my face, the less happy I am. I think that's valid, and I think if your take is like it was executed kind of badly, that's also valid. But I do think that there's definitely a lot of potential with what they're doing with professions. I think that there's a skeleton, like a framework that they can build on, hopefully,
Yeah.
and the lot of like the idea of profession talent trees, basically, or stuff that you're putting points into is, I think, pretty encouraging too. Like that's just something that's inherently exciting if you're interested in doing that. So. I would say, yeah, I would probably count it as a failure for this expansion with a lot of room to go better in the future ones.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right, so we have a quick one here. Dragonriding. I think this is I think Dragonriding is a massive banger. I think it has done so much for the game. It's just like you could realize it in the first few weeks of the expansion. You would like dragon ride while you're questing, whatever, and then you would like go in the old world and ride in an old flying mount and just be like, oh yeah, so we can just never go back to this. Like that is what current dragon riding is. I think the problem that clearly was posed was like, okay, well, what happens to the rest of all of our mounts then? And then I guess we'll have to see in the alpha and beta exactly what they do with dynamic flight, because they're trying to do like a dragon riding type thing for all the mounts. I don't know if that's going to be full Guild Wars where like they kind of got the inspiration from dragon riding from Guild Wars. Shout out stealing things from other games. I think every game should do that when someone has a great idea. But they don't just have like dragon riding, or I think it's griffin riding in that game. They have like a bunch of different ways that mounts ride based on what they are. And they like have different ways that like mounts it. So like imagine dragon riding, but there's like 4 different versions of it based on like what kind of mount it is. Like they could even kind of go down that route. So I'd be interested to see like what dynamic flight really looks like. But I think some other benefits that it's had is the zone design. So I think these zones this expansion are actually underrated, very, very cool, good, just massive zones. And I don't think they could have. I think dragon riding had a huge effect on the design of the entire continent because, like, I mean, just imagine traversing these zones without dragon riding, right? It would have been like Revendreth before you unlocked flying in Shadowlands. It would have been pretty rough. But I think they all like looked really cool, and I think the vastness of them, at least to me, has an impact on like what the expansion feels like. So overall, huge fan. I wish it was available in the whole like you could dragon ride everywhere earlier in the expansion. I like the races. I wish they were a little bit more challenging. I think if you have like all of your points, it seems like the races are really easy. But I don't know. I'm a fan of dragon riding. I don't think we could ever go back to not having it. I'm glad they realized that. But what are your all's takes?
Yeah.
I
God.
Okay. I do like dragon riding a lot, but it's been kind of weird this expansion. Well, not Dragon Riding specifically, just the open world, because this is the least I've interacted with the open world. I mean, that's just me because I don't really care about actually doing open world content and actually acquiring cosmetics and whatever people farm out in the open world. So I haven't really utilized dragon riding as much as I would have just like going around the world in the previous expansions. So I don't actually really feel the vastness. In the beginning of the expansion, actually, like at the very beginning when everyone was out farming rares and doing all that stuff, that was sick. I mean, like just flying around is like having everyone else around in the world being able to just like quickly get from place to place. I enjoyed that very much, but I haven't really experienced it too much outside of that.
Dude, part of that, before you go, Dranos, part of that might be world quests too. Like, world quests were this thing for 2 expansions that you had to do, and everyone interacted with them out of pure necessity. And then they did the route that we were asking for as players, where, oh, well, like, we don't want to feel forced to have to grind this thing all the time and log on every day and make sure we do these. And then they made them completely optional, which is like, basically like whatever the expansion's resources or like transmog or maybe, I don't even, like some other stuff. And then just no one does them ever. I think that dragon riding would have felt a lot different if you were doing world quests. Like, imagine having dragon riding when you were doing world quests in like BFA. That would have been insane.
Oh yeah, that would have been great.
So like, I think part of like what the application of dragon riding could have been has just been basically removed for, and maybe I'm speaking for just us on the call. Like maybe a lot of people in chat are like, you know what, I do every world quest for this. I doubt that, but like, I don't know. Maybe it just missed our part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, so I've done a lot of the like side content of the different kinds that have been out. Even this expansion, obviously a lot less than I did back in World Quest days. But I do think, yeah, Dragon Riding's been huge for that. World Quest is an interesting topic as well, because I think with World Quests, that is another thing they should re-look at going forward,
For sure.
because
Yeah.
they took the necessity out of doing them, but then the rewards you get for doing them now, like for instance, like Dragon Riding supplies or whatever, are just such a fake resource, because you never need you have more than you need across your account almost for sure to buy anything you need, right? And the thing that's stopping you is some achievement or some renown level or something that you need to actually buy whatever cosmetic you want with them. So the rewards is something they could look at as well, but also just the annoyingness of the average world quest has gone way up since BFA and Legion.
Really?
Like if you were to do a BFA or Legion world quest, a solid like 50% of those are kill this dude, right? Like someone in this cave is mining azurite. You gotta stop him. It's really bad. You gotta get in there and kill him, right? And now it's like, oh, you gotta show up and you gotta kill 13 stags. Okay, good. You've got the stags. Now you have to fashion their horns together and make a slingshot. And then slingshot yourself and collect 3 orbs to, power the gate and then kill the thing or something. Like it's like these multi-part quest chain world quests.
All for rewards that are less than what you got before.
For rewards that are, yeah, and again, like I'm not saying put AP back so that I have to go and do more annoying world quests. I'm just saying that side of it as well, making the world quest less annoying would be, I think, would be cool, because like now when I'm flying over them, I skip almost all of them. There's a couple fun ones, like if I'm like literally bored and not doing anything, I'll do like the rock climbing ones. Those are kind of fun. Dragon riding, like fly and plant your flags on these mountains. Those ones are kind of fun, but most of the combat ones I just wish were less annoying.
You know, one of my favorite ones, the ones from Nazjatar, doing the bejeweled ones, or like
the bejeweled ones.
Oh my god, ones. Bring that back! The amount of okay, so they were fun to do, and also they had some of the most legendary Twitch clips of all time of Lorgok doing them. I don't know if did James fully miss the like puzzle world quest meta, because that would have been just legendary if he was doing those. Grom probably. Yeah, they should bring those back.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think Dragon Riding, huge, obvious slam dunk, right?
Hold on, quick question about world quest vote. I mean, so you said there needs to be a little bit more. Like, what exactly do you think there should be more?
What can they offer you? What can they offer you this expansion? Crests, maybe?
Yeah, or they could even just look at the like Dragon Riding supplies economy and come up with a way to have that not be power, but have it be like a interesting and engaging progression. I would say even like protoform synthesis had a better, resource economy than this stuff did. And where it's like it's not going to be something you care about and need to engage with if you don't care about cosmetics. But I'm somebody who does care a little bit about cosmetics. Like I won't do super annoying grinds for them, but if there's like a fun grind for a fun cosmetic, I'll do it. And I think that's where they should like land with whatever resources they do with this.
I mean, I think one slam dunk is, imagine if there was like 1 or 2 good world quests a day that gave you some decently large amount of flight stones or crests.
Oh, yeah.
Like you would do that in a heartbeat, and there's really honestly not a lot of good applications for getting those in the game currently that aren't just grinding the same 2 things. So I think that would be a great way to make it better, because hopefully this upgrade system is here to stay. That's maybe we actually hadn't even planned on talking about that today, but the upgrade system is kind of like a new thing that
it should be, yeah.
It needs to go for like this patch specifically is so much better than last patches too, I feel like. But yeah, probably a completely different conversation. But yeah, just to tie up Dragonriding then. Dragonriding good. I think the one complaint I see about Dragonriding is I miss being able to just AFK fly in one direction and just go to this place and get up from my computer. I think that's a reasonable take, actually. I don't see why there's any reason. Like, if Dragonriding had the ability to just toggle something and then you just become a flying mount AFKing in one direction with auto run on, that is just like that couldn't be bad. It solves that problem entirely. And you would still have the ability to actually Dragonride and go faster if you want. Best of both worlds. Oh, someone said they already added that. All right, never mind.
Well,
Sounds
now
good.
you can ride the other type of mounts. So you still can't like you can't press a button of one of your 6 dragon riding buttons and have it become a flying mount, but you can just mount a non-dragon riding mount and fly somewhere. So
Oh, someone's saying
Yeah.
no, you can toggle that. Oh, no, you guys are saying they're adding one with dynamic flight. Yeah, that's okay. Then that's fine. We're saying now, but yeah, the if they are adding a toggle, that is excellent. Great.
even then, it's like I don't think it's like a mid-flight like button that you press to make. Like I think it's still you have to land and change. I think.
Oh, that's
could be wrong
see, I
with
don't like
yeah.
that. See, I actually think it would be fine to just like you already have dragon running buttons anyway. Why not just have one that's a toggle that makes you being able to auto fly? You know, I mean, it's whatever. This is who cares. But okay, so dragon riding, I think. So the next one on the list, I think, would derail pretty hard. We should probably. Do you think?
Okay. Yeah, that's why there's a question mark
We can
after
probably
it.
leave that for
I think we
last.
should save that for another episode. We're gonna need some content for these.
Another episode. Okay.
the
That's
rest
another
of these,
episode with probably an excellent guest of some kind.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so next we have talent trees. So talent trees we
This
had
one's spicy.
yeah, so we had like the default WoW Classic talent tree all the way from Classic through Kata, and then Mop had like the formation of what talent trees were going to be all the way up until Dragonflight, where you had like the rows with the 3 options. The left was always passive, the right was on use, and the middle kind of mixed. And then this expansion, they tore all that down. They added a bunch of like old cool tier bonuses to them. They added old Covenant abilities, and they made like these trees that are kind of reminiscent of the classic ones, but you know, just like more modernized. It's really controversial, right? Because some people's specs have some of them are unbelievable. Like they have awesome choices. They have completely different builds that are viable within them. You know, they have like the best of what these talent trees are a clear benefit, and they're super, super awesome. And they're certainly going in the right direction. And how you know this is the design and build. Forget power level of classes, because that's certainly part of this, but just the actual way the talent trees interact with you on the classes that have been reworked in the past 6 months are so clearly better, and clearly they understand what makes good talent trees now, and the ones that they're working on are applying that, and they're good. So like, you know, the only thing that feels bad is if you're a class that hasn't gotten that fresh coat of paint yet, you're just kind of sitting there waiting around and have a lot of bad decisions. I mean, there's so many. I mean, we could probably spend a whole podcast on this, just pointing out glaring issues with trees, like horrible pathing, you know, talents you would absolutely never take. Shockwave is in the capstone level of the warrior tree. You know, just absolute ridiculous decisions they made that they have they have not like philosophically moved off of, or they just haven't gotten around to it. But I think the new trees are enough to show you that this is the right move. There's just one kind of there's one big issue with talent trees I see, and that is, do you want to have really interesting choices and a lot of different talents that you play in your tree? Or would you rather have your best build and best talents kind of be the best thing for AoE and single target at the same time, which means your class will be more powerful? Look at Havoc Demon Hunters right now. Look at mages. Look at all these. Look at warlocks currently. Demon warlocks. Like the classes that get. Look at Enhanced Shaman. The classes that get all of their cleave and single target at the same time don't really have a lot of interesting decisions to make, but man, are they really, really good at everything all the time, and that's really strong. But then, like, some classes have really, really cool and different feeling AoE single target cleave builds, and that is, like, kind of accomplishing what talent trees wanted as far as, like, variability, and, like, you're always kind of moving around and changing stuff and all that. But then it's coming at a clear... We've seen this for, like, over a year now. It comes at a clear lack of power. So, That's the one question I think they kind of need to figure out, and they need to pick a direction to go there, and they need to make every class feel like that and not half and half, because then it's just a balance issue. So overall, I think talent trees are excellent. I hope they continue down this route, and I hope that by the start of next expansion or very shortly after, every single class's talent tree feels like the ones that have recently been looked at.
Right. I mean, you touched on most of the important points. I don't know how they can go about the decision making between having talents that just give you everything and then just having talents where you have to choose between two major choices, one of them being AoE and single target. Well, I mean, how do you guys feel about these specific points? Like, how do you guys feel about AoE versus single target? Should it just always be you can have both, or should you have to choose between AoE and single target?
That one I think can be fine either way, but I agree it should be more standardized so that there's not these specs that I know historically there's been some like Arms Warrior and Sin Rogue before the rework where you're just looking at it and it's like, man, my AoE and single target builds are so different from each other, and I really can't do one well without, like, it's like a classic. So there are some classic
Arms Warrior Season 1 was
specs.
Like, you would not believe it if you played another class. But it's also never... Okay, so I actually probably should have been more clear. I don't actually think there is a spec out there that is playing one build, and that one build with every single talent does full single target in AoE. Like, even in Enhance's case, probably the closest, you're still taking Crash Lightning in AoE. Like, you're swapping talents. In Havoc, you're dropping, either Serrated or Furious Gaze for Ragefire and either... Glaive Tempest or something else. Like, you are changing talents. The difference is changing 2 talents to get your AoE versus changing 4 or 5 is massive and can be the difference in like 10 and 20, 30, 40k single target loss to get your AoE stuff versus another class losing a lot less. So it's more of a balance issue, but the question is, like, if you were to homogenize is the bad word. If you were going to like make all the specs, what is the ideal amount of talents you want to swap to get to your AoE, right? Because like not every talent tree point is I'm choosing single target and AoE. Sometimes it's a lot more nuanced than that, right? It can be entire different builds. Like Enhance's other half of their tree is this physical build that's just totally different from their elemental build, right? It's not, those choices on every single node are not just that. But yeah, I think just finding a number of like what it makes sense to swap being correct, and then trying to make most builds feel like that.
Right, but in that situation though, like how would you have talent variability, and wouldn't that defeat the purpose of having the talent trees to begin with if you're basically playing the same thing, flexing 2 different points?
I don't think so. Like there's a few tiers I've played now in Raid and Mythic Plus. In Mythic Plus, I think you end up doing a lot of the same stuff. Some classes, class trees, you like swap around some utility stuff based on affixes maybe and stuff like that.
Ooh, okay. So that's like another point too, right? So now we're talking about utility versus throughput. So would you say like it's ever a good thing? Well, no, that applies for the spec trees too, because like you look at Shadow Priest, for example, they would have to spec into silence. But yeah, like is that ever a good thing though? Like is it ever a good thing where you have to
absolutely
like
spec
into
no,
when
horrible.
Moonkins had to like lose DPS
unassailably
to
bad.
Beam,
Unassailably bad. Anytime a class, especially in their spec tree, but it's more nuanced than this because some classes' class trees are different. But like if in your spec tree, if you have to choose between damage or some enhanced version of CC, like Solar Beam versus like, I think even still they lose damage to take like the longer Solar Beam or the shorter Solar Beam CD, right? Like But in the beginning of the expansion, it was much worse. But the thing is they do it in class trees too. Like, some classes have great class trees where there's basically 0 power, or there's very few things and they're very easy to get, and then you're just choosing other things. But then some classes are by default choosing between, throughput, or I think they should remove that. I think class trees, and I don't know why they chose to go half and half on this, but I don't see the reason why class trees should really have much throughput in them at all outside of free stuff. I think that the more interesting class trees are certainly ones where you're branching out to fill some kind of utility niche or vision, and not ones where you basically are locked in 95% of your points are throughput, and then you can kind of choose. And even in those ones where you kind of choose, you're losing a little bit of throughput. That decision feels terrible.
Yeah, but that's why it's rough, right? Because, like, on one hand, we want the tree to provide most of what the class needs, which is, like, having single target and AoE and having the utility that the class deserves. But on the other hand, if we provide them with all of that, then, like, where's room to flex and where's room to change talents? I feel like the best solution would probably be to have talents that change how your character plays. Like, maybe for Demon Hunter, for example, you have mover versus no mover, and that's like a playstyle decision. But do you ever really want to tie power behind it? Because whenever there's like a 5% damage gain, you will always opt for the 5% damage option, right? Like, if the movement...
Players that are like-minded with
ahead.
us in this call will always do that. Yeah, I think there's a portion of the game that definitely will have a choice there, but not we do not subscribe to that line of thinking. Yeah.
Not at 5%.
Yeah, I mean,
I think at 5%.
That is kind of true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5% is massive in WoW. Yeah. I don't know.
But to be fair, we have seen times where people would like Frost DK, where they would play two-handed Frost DK over Breath DK. So that is kind of true in that sense.
Yeah.
But would that be
yeah.
would that be a success if they had that type of option in the talent tree, where you just had like different play styles, and then one is just strictly worse, but like it's a different play style and it could be something that players prefer?
Yeah, man, the reason why I'm a fan of talent trees is I acknowledge that, especially if you are some classes, you will listen to this and just think it's baloney, and you are right to think that, because your class tree is just made with less quality than others, and that's just a fact. But the ones that are made well, and it's more than you'd think. It's not like there are 3 that are good and the rest of them are bad. Like, there's a lot of really, really good class and spec trees in this game. The good ones, in my opinion, are significantly better than the mop talent trees we had recently. And I would rather them, since this is evergreen, we're not losing these talent trees to start a next expansion. They're going to continually work on this perpetually till the end of time, right? So I like the ambition to get them to the point of where they are all that good. You can pick a couple of patch to work on. You can probably do a big chunk of them during an expansion. And I think the game is better off having them be like the good ones. It's just been definitely a bit of growing pains this expansion. And there are probably a few classes out there. Maybe it would be fun to make a list of like who got the most screwed by this change, because there are absolutely those people. But some of them are unbelievable and have been the main reason why some classes in this game are actually currently like the best designed version of them ever. Not a lot, but there are some, and they usually have insanely good talent trees. So I hope they continue with it. I don't know if you guys think it would, if you agree with that or not, but I know there are some anti-talent tree people.
I would agree for the most part.
Yeah, I think the issues we brought up are ones that do exist, and the quality varies wildly from tree to tree. I think that they've found a way to make a lot, like, the reworks are OP in a lot of cases. That's something we're going to move on to soon. But the talent trees that have been reworked have also been better qualitatively for the most part as well. In some cases, it's hard to separate that from them being OP, because in some cases, just if your thing is doing too much damage, it's going to feel more fun as well. But I do think that they have figured out how to make some pretty fun talent trees with some pretty good optionality in them. I think they have some good tools for it as well. I I think the choice node tech, like putting comparable effects on choice nodes or like utility against utility, throughput against throughput, those sorts of things onto a choice node, um, I think has a lot of potential to it. And I'm encouraged that if you look at hero talents, that's basically what they're going to end up being. But it also makes me think like, man, the mop talent system was basically just a bunch of choice nodes, right? And no actually deciding which branch of the tree you're going down. Um, so if I'm advocating for choice nodes and for less like deciding of different branches what you're going down, I'm basically saying go back to that, which is weird because it seems like this is better, but
That is
um,
true.
I don't know. It's because like basically hero talents are basically just that, right? Hero talents are basically just uh, the mop talent tree tech, but
Oh, kind of
disguised.
true, yeah.
Yeah.
I also feel really bad that like in most spec tree, there's like a vision of multiple things. There's mover versus no mover DH. There's caster versus no caster, holy paladin. There's elemental and physical enhance. Not every class is like this, but they have like visions of the class that can be a change. Like, I guess technically there's single-minded fury and Titan's Grave, even though not really. Like, there's those ideas. I think they've had some issues this expansion doing this right, or sometimes they do this right and sometimes where they do this wrong. Like, for example, right now Demon Hunter, really really powerful class, they've been nerfed a few times. um the no mover and mover are like really really close in rate. Like, they're good. Like, you could play both, and that's an idea that kind of works. That historically hasn't really been the case for Frosty Cave versus like a Blit versus Breath. I know right now Holy Paladins, they are a recently reworked class, and they had their time in the sun right after they did get that rework. But then they like basically what they did, like, people talk about them ruining their gameplay. Here's really what they did. They forced the caster build in Raid this patch. They were melee for a really, really long time, and most of the stuff you take in Raid right now is like much more caster oriented. Echo's Paladin before this raid quit because he hated Paladin, like almost citing that exact reason. Scaris. Dryny is basically not playing WoW until this has changed. He absolutely hates this version of Paladin. And this is just a small microcosm of every class can go through this, but if they're ever going to have distinct builds in the tree, they need to make sure that one of them is never alienated, because there are people that play the game to play specifically one of them. And I think that's a really, really hard thing to manage. I don't, that's probably a really hard thing to do, where you have two things be like really close together and both playing, and they made the decision to have paladins basically only really be able to play one while having any mana, and I think that's a problem. So I think managing that going forward could be something they look to do more at as well.
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot with a bunch of smarter friends, and like Evade included, and I've heard a lot of anti-new talent tree sentiments, and a lot of these pain points are exactly that. I feel like they are going in the right direction, though. Like, it's a good change. I do enjoy the new talent tree, but I do think it needs a whole lot of work. And so far, we're almost one expansion deep, but they still feel a little bit unfinished. Because I remember we've talked about this at the beginning of the expansion. I remember bringing up how long will it take for them to actually finish these talent trees. We were expecting like maybe one or two patches into the expansion, and we're at that point where we've seen a lot of reworks, but there are probably still a whole lot more talent trees that need that fresh coat of paint, as you've mentioned. So one other thing I wanted to touch on with the talent tree is, what do you guys think about the whole choice between having to take like Purge, Kick, CCs, like Turn Evil, Repentance, all that stuff? Because like I feel like that has been a huge pain point in the tree this expansion, especially when it comes to M plus, when it comes to like weeks with Incorporeal, where you have to like CC the ad, but then it's like, oh, I forgot to take my CC, or it's Afflicted week and somebody has to take a poison spell and you just forget to take it. I feel like that's always been a really annoying part of the talent tree, because we've always had these abilities baseline, and now you actually have to spec into them.
So I spent some time over that. I think I may be missing a few classes, I guess technically disc, but you mentioned like how long are they going to take to get through all of these. I marked down all the ones that they have like said that they're reworking in a patch or made like major changes to. Forget if it's like positive or negative. I'm looking at most of these now. It's certainly mostly positive, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So 17. It's been a year since talent trees have come out, and they have reworked almost exactly half of the total specs in the game. So this is just doing simple math. We're getting war within a year from now or something like that, probably a little bit less. I think the hope would be, I'm sure they're spending more time on this going into an expansion because they're not making another raid. So like we're hoping that all of them get reworked by then. Maybe that's I hadn't actually like looked at it like that before. That would be good.
Like before War Within comes out.
Yeah, like War Within. The launch of War Within is, well, I'm sure it's not going to be like slammed down all at once. It's going to be probably, let's just say, like every 2 or 3 weeks in the alpha or beta cycle, they're fully focusing on the talent tree for one thing, and like throughout all of alpha, they're kind of doing this rework thing constantly.
In the alpha and beta cycle.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, not for yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty likely. I don't know the extent to, like, they also have to be doing it's what, 80 hero talent trees or something like that as well.
Oh, very good point. That's fair. But those things are certainly, actually it would be a great question for an interview, which have not happened.
Wait, no, it's only 39. I'm stupid. It's 39 hero talent trees, I think, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so you would have to, I mean, I would be really interested to ask, because I actually talked to them about this at BlizzCon. There are like, you don't always have to interview Ian and Morgan. Sometimes it's nice to interview people that are kind of on the ground and like doing a lot of that stuff. Like the reason you send in your questions to Ian and Morgan ahead of time is so they can reach out to those people who are working on it directly, and they give you like a more nuanced and like complete answer for it. I'd love to hear about their workload. Like, what do they plan to accomplish by the next expansion, like as a class designer specifically? Or like, would you say like 70% of your workload is going to be on hero talents? Or do you think like, a decent goal for you guys is also to do a ton of like class and spec tree reworks? Like, where does that stand? Are hero talents the priority? Is the base evergreen nature of talent trees the priority? I would love to know exactly how much they plan to do on that. It'd be really interesting.
It's also rough because what I've noticed is that a lot of times whenever they make these reworks, they don't feel finished until it actually comes to live and then it's been played with a little bit. You look at a lot of these trees and they would get played with for the first week or two, and then all the glittering problems come out, and suddenly they'd have to make adjustments to these class trees. Because like every single reworked tree well, not every single one, but most of the reworked trees so far have been balanced in the poor way. It's rarely the case they hit the mark whenever they do a rework on a spec.
Well, I think that is an interesting. So like we had on here to talk about rework syndrome. I don't think that's unintentional. You're saying it's balanced poorly. I think those trees are clearly have a lot of new synergies and bring a lot of power that way. I think Blizzard intentionally makes those classes strong as well. I think they are putting on their thing for the patch. If you want to come back and play, and what was the most 10.2 most recent patch, they said we're doing a rogue rework. Would it make a lot of sense for them to have all these rogues come back to the game and then like their classes are reworked and they're more fun but they stink? Like having a class be decent definitely increases your likelihood of playing it. It increases the likelihood you're not going to swap to an alt for your guild or want to play something else that's like Foddim or whatever. I guess what you have to prove this is like outside of literally Ret Paladin, every single time a class has been reworked with their spec tree, they have been top tier in all kinds of PvE. At least I have no idea about PvP or introduced, I guess, in Aug's case. Like, they've been extremely good. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's them doing the talent trees wrong. I think that is them intentionally having them at a tuning target that is higher than the average class. And then the new synergies of their spec also just make them super strong.
Yeah, but I do think there's a big difference between it being good and it being like straight up OP, as we've seen in Season 2. We straight up had Bear Tank, HPAL, Firebait, Shadow Priest, that recently got reworked, and they were just absolutely beyond any other spec.
And Mage, yeah, what about this patch? What got reworked this patch? Disc, which is the best of Mythic Plus it's been in like a super long time. They were super insane in Raid. You basically played 2 on every fight. Havoc, you ran 2 of those on every fight, if not more. They're by far the best Mythic Plus spec. They've been nerfed 3 times, and they're probably still meta. You could maybe argue Mage Rogue instead, but like, Rogue got reworked. I just could pull this up again, but I'm pretty sure Warcraft Logs has them as like the single 3 top specs, all 3 of them. It's just simply not an accident. It has to be intentional. And I think you can certainly question whether that's good or not. Again, we subscribe to a line of thinking that maybe does not represent everyone, but having the whole going into the patch what the OP classes are going to be based on reworks. I mean, maybe if they get all this stuff done in the alpha and beta cycle, maybe this isn't a recurring theme next expansion, but I can say that it's been a little problematic to say the least in this one, I think.
Yeah, I do think that is a very valid criticism, because it is exciting if you're like, oh, I'm a rogue player and it's rogue's time to shine because it's getting reworked here. But like, man, if you're just one of the other, you're just playing like a DPS warrior or a DPS DK or something like that, you're like, man, I do half the damage of these things, of whichever of the 3 specs they choose on like half of the fights in this raid.
And
like, what?
And
Yeah.
and it's also compounding with the effect that I have this I have this not great talent tree. So like you have to separate the design of your tree and your power level, and both of them are, if you are not picked for a rework, both of them feel worse to the person who is beating you. That person has a better tree, they're making more fun decisions, their class is more fun to play, and they're better than you, and you're just sitting here like, when am I getting one of these things? And that, I mean, if you are super negative about that, I feel like it's completely warranted. That has to feel bad. Especially if you're a one trick of anything that isn't picked, you just have to feel bad. If you think like we do. And I think a decent amount of people do. Certainly a lot of people who listen to this, I think, are more likely to, but maybe not everyone. Well, although I remember this from Shadowlands. I think more people think like that than you think, because they introduced this covenant system, and I think it was like Nobble. Who's the like big lore YouTuber man? Is Nobble?
Yeah, Nobble.
Is it Nobble? Nobble was doing like a stream, and they were like, "What covenant are you gonna play?" And you would never expect him to have this answer, and it is whichever one does the most DPS. I really think it's been kind of
massively a lot of players.
Yeah, and it's kind of and that's the exact kind of thing where like you would assume the average casual player is just going to pick the thing that is the coolest. Those are extremely different, colorful, thematic, different things. You would expect them to choose based on that, but no, it's actually just as simple as whichever one does the most damage. So maybe this is a lot more along the lines of that as well. So.
Well, it's also, I would imagine, like a lot of people, especially newer players, when they look at the talent tree, they probably can't even make the decision themselves. There's like all these different trees, and they just come into like, what do you even call it, like problem paralysis or whatever. And in that situation, like, isn't it just easier if you just like straight up Google, like in 2024 nowadays, you can just literally just Google like, all right, what build should I play, and then just like copy and paste it. I feel like that's got to be a lot of players. I'm actually curious though, like, are there actually players out there who literally just like cook their own builds? They like full natty, just like straight up cook their own builds. They don't like look at any other builds. They just do their own thing. It could be. I wonder how bad these builds are.
I mean, okay, so some of the most happy people I've ever talked about or talked with in WoW are people who actually just clear AOTC on Heroic and then just go do other things, and they don't really care about their performance or their teammates' performance at all. They just kind of vibe and have fun. I met a lot of these people at TwitchCon and BlizzCon, and I was speaking to Skarzard like sometime last year, and he was talking about how when they were doing these reworks, it was kind of problematic for him because like he had someone in his guild, I think they were like a rogue, and they loved playing like this slower version of Assassination or something. And that's just the thing they've always played, and they loved it. And he was like, oh, well, if that thing's not going to be good, they're still going to play it because they want to play the thing that is just like kind of feels bad that it's going to be worse, all those things. And like they kind of, I don't know, you kind of get the idea that those people just game and have fun. I think a lot of those people probably do. Some of them open up Wowhead and choose click copy link on best single target build, probably. But some of them probably cook up their own thing. I mean, I've been in one of those runs. I was coaching a Mythic guild in Castle Nathria that had an Affliction Warlock just lobbing out those Venthyr balls that was, I'm pretty
the meatballs.
Yeah, the meatball. I'm pretty sure it looked sick as hell, but I'm pretty sure it was like a single target loss to select it or to cast it. But like, some like people definitely do that. I think people that we interact with and we get like constant confirmation bias in our streams from how people play. But again, a lot of the people who watch our streams are people who are likely to think like us. I think those people exist. As far as like making a percentage of the WoW's population of who does and who doesn't, I think you'd just be totally fucking making it up. But I think it's more than people think like this, though.
I think the amount of people that would pick a weird covenant, like a wrong covenant or whatever, is going to be higher than the amount of people who cook up a talent build. Because like picking a covenant's easy, right? You've got 4 choices. You get to play with all the abilities when you're leveling up. It's one button. You pick it, right? And it does its thing. Cooking up your own talent tree, like that is much more difficult than copying a link, right? Like it's actually the harder thing to do. Obviously, like you can just do it and go through and click buttons that look fun, but like I think that's more intimidating. I think it's more intimidating to do that than to like, you know, just be playing Venthyr or whatever and not think about it and not look stuff up, right? I don't know. So my perception at least is there would be fewer people doing that than we're doing the Covenant thing, which I do think also obviously that didn't happen too much at our level, but I do know it happened.
Dude,
I would say less than a lot of people argued it was gonna, but still it happened a lot at lower levels of the game.
The full cook on the talent tree would be unironically like insanely hard. It's kind of like the PoE
exactly.
thing. Like no one's going to do that. What you might do is you might copy the build, see what generally is good, understand what goes where, and then just be like, oh, well, I just don't want to play this thing and I want to play that thing. That's probably the extent of the cook is like removing one thing about it that you don't like and adding something else that you think might be fun. But it's not like just like opening up a fresh talent tree and just start going.
Yeah, like, oh, I want this, and that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, and I'm sure there are people who've done that who've just like literally leveled up and selected their talents and they have those talents. But like, I think, I think it's so intimidating to try and even do like heroic raid with a, you know, home cooked artisan talent tree.
We gotta try that one day. Just
that
like
could
cook
be
our own
that could be a
builds and
vibe.
do like some content with it.
That'd be a lot of fun. I'd be down.
All right. So this is probably, I think we're probably chilling on the stuff we've done so far. We had one thing that we didn't discuss and had a question mark on it. Again, that's probably just its own episode.
Yep.
And yeah, so we do have the Patreon question, which Dratnos will so elegantly read to us. Also, quick shout out. In the case like last week where our stream DCs, you know, you can still get full access to that on like Spotify, Apple, all the podcast places. And also we do extra epis on Patreon. We usually answer a lot of the questions we don't get to, so make sure to do that. Amen.
Amen.
Patreon.
Max, if you're ready to pull the router and disconnect it so that Frank has a more fun editing experience again this week,
that'd be good.
Now is the time.
I can do that.
All right. Our question, though, is from Gonzo, our Patreon question, that says, this M+ season has been a lot of fun for me, but now that I have my portals and hit an IO score that I'm happy with, there isn't a lot of incentive to continue pushing. I don't have a regular group, so I'm not going to get title, and pugging anything past the early 20s is rough, partially because there are fewer people interested in pushing past the required key level for max vault slots, which makes sense, because there's no real in-game reason to do a 22 aside from higher score. Is there something that Blizzard could do to incentivize pushing keys for people that won't get title but still want to progress? Maybe a cosmetic drop for 3250 IO, or a mount for doing all 25s, a lesser title for the top 5% of players? Would something like that devalue the accomplishment of top players, or would you welcome an extra reward along the way?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I love this question.
Yeah, go
It's
Dorki.
been such a talked about topic. It's been brought up so many times because of what we've seen this patch. 20s have been significantly easier, and a lot of more casual players have been getting into 20s much quicker, or even like for the first time ever. And now we're getting into this whole, what you would call mid-core, like maybe mid-hardcore players that are trying to continue playing the game, essentially. And there's just not a whole lot of incentive to really go beyond 20s at the moment. And this has been asked for a lot, actually, by a lot of players, and for us even though I personally don't care a whole lot about cosmetics and rewards from M+ specifically, but I would still love it. I would love for them to bring back something like maybe challenge mode cosmetics, challenge mode transmogs for, like, you know, say doing 25s or getting into a little bit higher than that, or maybe even like myth track gear at some point. Like maybe if you do like a high enough key, you could even get like myth track gear, but I don't know how they would be able to balance that properly. Or like maybe 1 or 2 months into the season, you can start getting myth track gear at like plus 25s or plus 30s. I don't
At like a
know what
low
would be
chance
good
or like a
number.
weekly cap amount of them.
Yeah,
Or
I mean
just
it's just like hard to
unlimited?
say. Just, yeah, because
Unlimited
like they
mythic
just,
track gear.
unlimited. Well, yeah, I mean like maybe like 1 or 2 months, or maybe even like 3 months in, it would be fine because like at that point, it's not something that would like interfere with players who are pushing for cutting edge content. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hard to say because like I definitely do feel like there needs to be more
There's
rewards
a huge
past
gap.
20, and I just don't know what it could be.
There's a
So
huge. Go ahead, Dratnos.
I'm also skeptical of like adding more power level rewards to the above the 20 mark of the track. Um, but I do like the idea of adding a bunch more, and I don't think it needs to necessarily be just above 20, but even more like just gradual rewards along the way up, right? Like M plus right now gets what, 2 titles amount, 8 portals each season. Like there's a lot of room for stuff like transmogs and mounts and pets and stuff to be added at various different steps along that ladder upwards. I do think there's room as well, like you said, Dorky, for like later in the season. I think some quality of life. Like imagine if you could just upgrade some of your hero track stuff to myth track stuff with a, you know, a token that you get for doing all the 21s and all the 22s or something like that, and then, you know, that lets you just get your myth track M plus trinket instead of having to RNG it out of your vault. Again, I wouldn't really want that to be something that was obligatory to farm for Hall of Fame raid progression, but
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, this would just be
I
something that
like the
comes
idea
later in the
of
patch
having this be something that
when
unlocks later in a patch. Yeah,
right,
and
because
I
like
just think
people
like
at
a
that
bunch of
point already
cosmetic rewards
have.
would be perfect.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and well, cosmetics are always weird because then people feel. Yeah, I actually randomly have, I think, pretty good perspective on this patch because something I've been doing for content and for fun has been mostly pugging Mythic Plus. So I've done most like 27s, 26s just via the group finder. Just randomly queuing up, no comms, just going in there and slamming. And I can tell you that there's a huge gap between the 20s, the 21s, and the 22s. And then there's like this 2 to 3 key level gap of like, why would I go from here to there thing? The 25 plus pugs are pretty decent, but the 22 to 25s are like tragic. Like it's like a mixture of what people want in the game kind of thing. So I actually think that Mythic Plus pushing could become something that more people do outside of like the super degen tryhard people. And it would be somehow bridging that gap. And what you're suggesting would be great. So something along the lines, you know, you do 20s for portals, and then on the way up to 25, there's just something there. Because the people who are doing above 25s are there for a reason and are going to do that anyway. And what there needs to be is like, no one, if you're just doing 22s and you're just running into people who are just trying to do weekly loot and it's like really bad, you're not going to go up to 25. But if more people were incentivized to do that, it would have more people naturally along that progression path. And then maybe once they're at 25s, they're like, hey, my class is really good this season. I'm having a lot of fun. Like I maybe want to try to do some of these keys. And then like, it's just more healthy. There's just more players to go around all the time. So I think it's actually, I don't think you really thought of this when you said this, but I think a solution similar to what you're kind of suggesting, I think would actually have much, much more positive benefits than you'd think on the current landscape of like how Mythic Plus works. So it's pretty smart.
Indeed, it is very smart. All right. I guess one final thing before we close out today that was mentioned as well that we forgot to talk about in the Happy Holidays section is that Bobby Kotick is gone from Blizzard Entertainment.
Hooray.
So I did get a Christmas gift this year.
Yeah, I tweeted this yesterday, but you know, and they're not all Blizzard employees. Some of them are like creators that have worked with Activision or Blizzard in some way and have had just some of those people will always have a story about Bobby, and it is never anything other than like it's like cartoonishly bad. Like it's not like, oh, that guy seems like kind of a jerk. It's like he did that. Like, you know, I mean, actually I have one, there's a creator that did some work with Activision or Blizzard in the past and has a story about that guy that I will tell you guys later. I can't say they wouldn't want me sharing it on stream. But it is, yeah, the guy's just I'm so glad he's gone. I think he did a ton of damage to that company. I'm sure the shareholders are really happy, but I don't think he was doing things in the best interest of making good video games. So I'm certainly glad he is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably just a W all around for video gamers out there.
It paves the path for a nice, prosperous new year with, things on the upswing, and that's us as well here at the PoddyC. Hope everybody's been enjoying our first, I guess, fraction of a year with this, but we're also open to ideas, topic ideas, stuff like that. Patrons, of course, have the easiest line through the Patreon Discord to that. There's a channel in there now for it as well, but we're interested in ideas from everywhere as well. We're gonna have a nice long period of coming up with content. Although I guess once alpha and beta start, we can
I
maneuver the
feel
show into
confident
that
in our
pretty easy.
ability to do this
Yeah.
because, like, I'll just give you guys full disclosure. I woke up today an hour before this started and I forgot we were doing this. And then, like, 5 minutes after, like, I guess like 30 minutes before we started, I said, yo, what are we actually talking about today? And we basically fully YOLO'd this, and this episode was excellent. So, if we try, I think we will always find a way to have good conversations. And there's obviously an infinite amount of, like, good guests you can bring on to talk about all kinds of things. So it'll be great. PoddyC owns. Make sure to subscribe to the Patreon.
Yeah, yo, I'm looking forward to the entire next year with you guys.
Oh,
You guys have a
very sweet.
very
sweet.
happy new year. 2024 is going to be great. It's going to be an entire year of PoddyC. Dude, I play this game way too much, so I'm sure there's going to be infinite things to talk about.
You're so festive right now with your hat.
Oh, yeah. Happy New Year. Where the hell am I right now?
You're in a padded room.
Why?
The M
I
plus
don't know.
containment cell.
I don't know. That's what Frank linked me. I think the better question
Makes
is, why
sense.
are you in there?
I mean, there's no way I would know if I'm in here.
Yeah. All right, and then we are obviously podcast over at this point. Is the we're filming the Patreon one later, right?
We can, yeah. I mean, I feel like
I'm around
we
later.
could do it after. Like, I don't want to brick your stream or whatever.
Oh no, I'm
by
streaming
doing
right
it
now. Yeah, I will not be doing it for a while.
I'm down to do it later today or tomorrow or whatever.
What time,
whenever.
Dorki? I heard your schedule is interesting right now. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I just left for like 3 hours. I woke up at like 10 p.m. for like the past 2 days, and I just fucking let it rip all the way until like noonish. Then I just sleep in. But today I took a nap.
Okay.
Maybe we do it. Are you going back to bed then?
tomorrow?
Sam?
Yeah,
Well, I don't care. I mean, I am ready to let it rip whenever. Just let me know.
Really? Because it would make. So, are you sleeping soon, or are you like staying up to reset your thing?
I don't know. What should I
Well,
do?
you kind of. So we can either record this in like 4 or 5 hours or something like that, or we can just do it tomorrow. Both of those are fine.
I don't care.
You
Whatever
are the
works with
bad
you guys.
sleep man. You need to decide.
Well, but I'm probably not the best person to make that decision.
You are exactly the best person to make that decision.
It's gonna be a bad decision, but be a good decision for me.
That's fine.
That is fine.
That's yeah. What would you prefer between those two options?
Yeah, you can choose two options. We can do it tomorrow at some point or later today. Up to you.
We could just do it tomorrow, I guess.
Tomorrow
All right,
it
there we go.
is.
Tomorrow it is. Let's go. Dorki made a decision. Very good.
All right. Wow. Holy, it's gonna be the
Amen.
worst decision of my life.
Well, okay, you already okay. That's fine. Well, you're sticking to it. You can't change it now. All right.
Be bad.
All right. See you guys later.
All right, later.
You're
All right.